spooky. I'm not. Like, my brain is, but I'm not. Anyway, welcome back to another spooky video. I'm not spooky. If you're new to the channel, every Friday we are doing spooky videos until Halloween. And I tell a ghost story while I do makeup, but like not while I do makeup. I do a voiceover because like I just don't think I could like focus on the makeup and tell a story at the same time. I'm not Bailey Sarian. I can't do both. I just can't. Just don't, I can't. All right. I'm going to get into this, and today's look is actually going to kind of tie in with the story a little bit. And I get to play with fake blood, which I was going to put it in my mouth, but it says on here not to put it in the mouth, so gotta change up my idea for the look a little bit, but that's fine. This is why we read labels, because that probably would have like poisoned me or something. Like, we don't want that. Okay? I'm not dying for my art. Suffer a little bit, but not die. You know what I'm saying? Alright. Let's get spooky. Have you ever found yourself in the wrong place at the very worst time? Well, that's what happened to John. John was your typical all-American Southern boy. He liked fishing and hunting and, you know, America and all that. Well, his grandfather was like his best friend, and they did all of that together. So when his grandfather passed, he left a big tract of land that was like right next to a national forest where they did all their hunting. And John was a very accomplished hunter. You know, he did it every season, ever since he was old enough to hold a gun, pretty much. So he knew his way around that land. He knew what he was doing. And he had to move away for a few years. He had a job opportunity, and he decided to take it, and, you know, met a girl and ended up staying for a little longer than he thought he would, and you know how it goes. But he ended up coming back to his hometown, found a job, found a house, and then hunting season was coming up. So John went out to the land just to kind of see how wild it had grown up while he was gone, and, you know, see if some of his favorite spots, and, you know, kind of get a feel for like where the deer were and all that. So he goes and he starts walking through the little wooded areas and stuff, and he starts noticing that someone's went through and like carved some strange marks into the trees. And he didn't really know what they were. It's sort of like a triangle shape or something. He had no idea what was going on, but he just assumed, you know, kids had come out and been partying there or something. So he goes further into the woods, and he starts seeing these like wooden medallion looking things that had the same symbol on them, hanging from low-lying branches in the trees. And he thought that was really weird, but again, he just figured, you know, area teenagers having shenanigans out in the woods. Not, you know, uncommon in small town areas. So he goes back further to like the back of the property, and there's like this little clearing back there. And he noticed there was like stones stacked up at like one end of the clearing, and in the middle of the clearing there was signs that there had been some big fires set, like lots of, you know, burnt out logs and ashes and stuff. Someone had built a big fire pit. So, you know, right away he's like, okay, definitely area teens have been coming out here and, you know, partying and stuff. So he decided to kind of make a blind up in like a tree far enough away that he could see if they, you know, lit a fire, and he's going to catch them and scare them off, because he had private property signs put up all over the place. So they had to know that they were on private property, and it kind of made him mad, you know, like they're going to come in here and party it up and scare away all the wildlife, and deer season's coming up, he's got to hunt. So he makes his little blind, and every day before dusk he would drive into a little back way that he knew to get to the property, hide his truck, and he'd climb up there and he'd wait. And he'd wait and he'd wait, and it took days. But finally, he was up in his blind one night, and lights could be seen. So he snuck down, and his idea was he was going to sneak up on them and fire his shotgun into the air and scare them off. So he goes creeping up, and he could tell there was a big fire, but he couldn't really make out exactly what was going on. He didn't hear any music or anything, but he started hearing whispering, but he couldn't figure out what was being said. Like, he couldn't make it out. He got closer and closer, and he realized the whispering wasn't whispering. It was a chant, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. And he finally got close enough that he could see there were 8 figures. There were 6 of them standing around in a circle, wearing some kind of hoods or something. And then there was one by the rocks that wasn't hooded, but she had on a mask. And then there was someone leaning down with their head on the massive rock pillar. But he didn't have a good feeling about this. This seemed very strange. So he got a little bit closer. And as he was getting closer, the lady without the hood pulled a big dagger out from behind her back and was holding it up in the air. He realized what was going on and shot his gun off to scare them away. The 6 people in the circle, they ran. But the lady in the mask, she locked eyes with John. And he could still hear the chanting. She wasn't saying anything though. Her lips weren't moving, but the chanting just kept getting louder and louder and louder, until suddenly everything went black. John woke up hours later with a massive headache. He figured one of the cloaked figures must have come back and knocked him out with a rock or something. But when he woke up, there was no sign of anyone around. He made his way back to his truck, went home, went to the bathroom to kind of, get some band-aids, patch himself up, but he realized once he got into the bathroom, he didn't have any blood or anything on the back of his head. There was no sign of him being knocked out or anything. Like, the only weird thing was there was a big chunk of his hair missing. Like someone had cut it off with a knife. He was a little shaken, and he thought about calling the police, of course, because, what else you could do? What can you do, But then he kind of thought about it, and the more he thought about it, he was like, what am I going to say to the police? That I saw someone almost sacrifice somebody in the woods? No one's going to believe me. This is a small town. Nothing like that happens around here. So he decided to not say anything. He just took a shower, went to bed, woke up the next day, went to work. And everything was fine. Until about 3 o'clock that day. And he started coughing. He felt fine. Didn't have a fever or anything like that. But he just couldn't stop coughing. Well, eventually, work sent him home because, it was just like he couldn't stop, like literally could not stop coughing. He got home, tried to drink some water, and it was like the instant he would swallow it, it would just come right back up. But it felt so good to swallow it, so he just kept trying. But he kept coughing it back up as soon as he'd swallow it. This went on until about 6 o'clock that night, when finally he coughed up a single human fingernail. John could not figure out how an entire fingernail would have been stuck in his throat. I mean, how do you explain that? So obviously he didn't go to the hospital, because, I mean, what is he gonna say? I coughed up a fingernail? So again, he just ate dinner, kind of watched a little TV, and then went to bed. He went to work the next day, and everyone was like, hey, are you feeling better? And he's like, yeah, I feel fine. I felt fine yesterday. I don't really know what that was. And again, about 3 o'clock, he started getting a pounding headache. And he couldn't figure out what it was. Like, he wasn't prone to migraines or anything like that, but it was like the room felt like it was pulsating. He could feel his heart beating in his eardrums. It was just awful. All he could do was sit at his desk and hold his head in his hands. So again, work ended up sending him home because he couldn't function. He couldn't do anything. This time he went to the hospital because, I mean, it was a headache. It was a massive headache. He thought maybe they could give him something because Tylenol wasn't doing anything. So he got to the hospital. They admitted him, and they couldn't find any signs of what would be causing his headache. They gave him some low-grade pain pills, and nothing really helped. So then they thought, well, maybe they needed to, do a scan or something, see if maybe there was something happening to his brain. They asked him, have you suffered any head trauma? And he thought about the woods. But again, he didn't have any sign of being knocked out from behind or anything. So we thought, well, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. So he lied and said that he had been walking in the woods and tripped and fell, and he might have hit his head harder than he realized. So immediately they were, okay, you're just concussed. It was a delayed reaction or something. But then he started throwing up blood. Well, immediately the doctors would think, okay, something is seriously wrong with him. They ran all kinds of tests, did scans, all of that. He ended up being in the hospital overnight. Everything came back fine. He was absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong with him. So they ended up sending him home, and he was definitely dreading that bill. And he stayed home for that day. And then the next day, he went to work. And he felt fine. And again, at 3 o'clock, he started coughing again. And he was really hoping he wasn't fixing to cough up another fingernail, because, again, how do you explain that to anyone? The coughing kind of went away, so he thought maybe he was okay. And then he started feeling really nauseated. So he went to the bathroom and he started to throw up. Only it wasn't right. It was teeth. Human teeth. But they weren't his. All of his teeth were still in his mouth. Well, again, he didn't know how to explain this, so he just didn't say anything to anyone. Scooped them out, threw them away in the trash can, washed his hands vigorously, and went back to his desk. That night, he went home, and he thought he saw someone standing behind his house, but he looked again, and there was nothing. That kind of spooked him, but you know, he's tired. It's been a very, very long week, and he just chalked it up to that. But he made sure all the doors were locked, of course, because, you know, he felt comfortable, but not that comfortable. The next day was a Saturday. He was home all day. Never really noticed anything odd. Nothing happened. 3 o'clock came and no weird symptoms occurred, and he was feeling comfortable. And then about dusk, he happened to be passing by a window, and he, again, thought he saw a figure. Well, he looked again this time, and it didn't go away. There was a figure standing there, wearing a cloak and a mask, holding something in their hand. John thought about calling the cops and scaring them off, but he figured it'd be easier to just grab a gun and go out there, confront them. So he grabbed his gun and he went outside, and that's when he realized that wasn't the only figure. There were 6 of them surrounding his house, all holding something in their hand. He turned around to go back inside and call the cops because he didn't want to mess with all 6 of them. And there was the masked lady. Hair as wild as he thought he imagined it the other night in the woods. And then the chanting started again. The circle grew closer and closer. The chanting grew louder and louder. And again, he blacked out. When he woke up, he was back in the woods. He was alone, but he was naked, laying on the ground. He tried to get up, then he realized he was staked to the ground. His arms had been tied down by stakes, his legs had been tied down by stakes, his neck was laid down by stakes. He couldn't move. Then slowly, the chanting started again. He turned his head trying to see the cloaked figures, but he couldn't see anyone. Suddenly, the fire in the middle of the pit burst into life, and he could slowly see the cloaked figures coming in out of the woods. The masked lady walked towards him, and it's like he could hear her chanting inside of his head. And then softly she said, "Sleep. Sleep. You're so sleepy. Rest your eyes. This'll all be over soon. I just need a heart." And that was the last thing John ever heard. And here's our finished look. A little different, but I wanted to do fake blood. So, yeah. Careful what you find in the woods. See you guys next week. Love you, bye.